guys, here we are again talking about coaching. So a question I've brought today was about packages. I've been hearing a lot about coaches and making packages, and that's something that's quite new to me, and I don't even think I know what that means. So I'm hoping you can help me create some clarity on that subject.
Good. So what's the best coaching package, and what the hell is a package?
Yeah.
Well, just to kind of the basics, I guess, to start with. Packaging means that you don't work session by session. So somebody comes and works in one session, and then you ask them, do you want the next session, or when do you want to come in next? There's always some uncertainty whether a client is going to continue or not.
I see, yeah.
It's open-ended if you work session by session. That has some advantages and some disadvantages. The good thing about a package is that a client is invited to commit to a journey. And most coaches that I know, they really want to take clients on a journey. Sometimes amazing things happen in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, half a day. There's very long coaching sessions. So you can go, some call it a deep dive or an intensive or a strategy session. You just do a one-off, and then you walk away with a lot of value and you are clear on what you need to be doing. That's really good for some kind of coaching. For a lot of the coaching particularly that I'm interested in, I want to take clients on a journey. I want to work with them over 6 months, 3 months, a year. Because I know they've committed to a journey. It's like when you go to a therapist, nobody goes to a therapist for one session. People go to a therapist to go through a transformation or to heal something or to really work on something. And so sometimes the going gets a bit tough. Sometimes you might be in a little slump in that journey and you're like, holy shit, something just opened up and I really need to get out of my comfort zone if I really want to be who I want to be or do what I set out to do. Sometimes you realize, in order to achieve my goal, I really have to get out of my comfort zone, do something I'm not comfortable with. And then at that point, some clients might drop out, because they get cold feet or it's difficult, it's challenging. They have to have some really uncomfortable conversations with their bosses or partners or children or friends, and then some chicken out, because it's hard and they'd rather not do hard work. So when they've committed beforehand, often by paying you up front for a package, or they've signed a contract for a certain amount of sessions, then they have committed to you for that journey. And you know that if after 3 sessions the going gets tough, they're most likely coming back because either they don't want to lose the money or they've made a promise.
Okay. That makes sense. I understand that. Interesting. I guess the question that comes out of that for me is, if someone comes to you and they want to train for something like a marathon and then they've signed up to a package and it lasts, 3 months, for example, and within a month they kind of feel like they've achieved what they needed to run their marathon. What do you do with the remaining kind of time in the package? Do you kind of force them into starting on a new topic entirely, or?
That's a really good question.
Yeah. Okay.
I have tons of answers, but you've been sitting there
it is a great question, and I've actually personally experienced something like that, where a client I worked with from Canada had some goals, and we achieved most of our goals after 3 months. And she actually...
In a 6 months package?
Yeah, in a 6 month package. And actually she asked whether it would be useful to continue. Right? And for me that was the first time I was in that situation, so I wasn't really sure. And I said, hey, look, we are in this package, you've already paid for it, right? So let's explore it. And I'm open to go either way. So personally, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but I thought, let's be open and really see if there's something useful. And there was a lot of other stuff that came up. And I think for me personally, it's again coming back to what Yannick said is, coaching becomes so much more useful when it's kind of compounded over time. So often, behind one goal, there's other stuff.
Yes, yeah,
there's
for sure.
always more, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you reach your 6 months goal in 3. I've had a client who reached his 10-year goal in 3 months, and then they're like, what am I going to work on next? I just bought a house. That's amazing. And then, there's that moment where you're like, okay, so what are we going to do with the rest of our time? And that's where the question of what's the best package comes in. Because, for example, I have a colleague who charges for results, not for sessions.
Okay.
So if you were to reach your goal that you came in for coaching in 3 sessions rather than 6, you're not going to get the sessions back because you didn't pay for the sessions. You paid for the result and you got the result.
Right, that's a really interesting way of doing it. Yeah.
So it's an interesting way. It also adds a lot of pressure, I think, when I discuss this with coaches. Because if you charge for results, you kind of show up for the results. And some coaches can get really nervous about getting them the result. And it's not about me getting the client the result most of the time. It's me facilitating the space where the clients can reach their results. So it adds a level of confidence when you put that session forward, that kind of package. But it also adds a level of pressure for you. So
I think it adds pressure on both the coach and the client. Because the client probably thinks like, hey, I need to perform. And sometimes they will take away actually the important part, which is the process, right? And I think it can work probably for some people. I don't see it, really being useful for most coaches. Something that comes up for me is also this. There's this saying that most people don't fail because they achieve their goals. Is most people not necessarily fail, but I think most people set small goals and they get really comfortable. Right? And I think it's again. So coming back to your question, it's just really exploring. Well, what else is it? What else do you want to create? What else do you want? And I think it's again about contracting up front. Right? It's like personally, my contract has been very straightforward. There are no results guaranteed, and there's no refund. And again, we can talk about what other ways you can do in terms of refund and guarantees, but that's worked really well because it kind of removed expectations.
Got you, yeah.
And we got back to commitment.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, I'm gonna give 100% and you give 100%.
Okay.
And, let's play, and we still set goals, right?
Yeah.
We set goals, especially, life goals, business goals. But there is no expectation there.
That's super interesting there because I still hear one of my marketing coaches, I went to a business coach at some point and he said, Yannick, you need to speak with more confidence. You need to speak with certainty. He didn't say confidence, he said certainty. Because I had lots of confidence, but I can't guarantee you that you're going to reach your results. And he's like, well, how do you expect your clients to feel confident enough? Like when they feel certain, then they sign up. If you're certain that you can solve their problem, then they're gonna feel good and they're gonna part from their money. So in terms of sales, you want to create as much certainty as possible. And I think my response at the time was, but I'm an existentialist. I believe in the general uncertainty of absolutely everything. How can I talk with certainty when I can't even be sure that I'm gonna be able to leave the room if I tried? I might have a heart attack going there, or somebody might stop me, or might be locked for some reason, So the more certainty you put forward, and I say certainty and confidence because that's how I kind of made sense of that. I can be confident about something, but there's no guarantees. So I also think there's no guarantees because we might meet a deep-seated trauma at session 3 in our clients that makes them, it makes it unable for them, that they just can't pick up the phone and talk to that person because it's ontologically unavailable to them. It's like you have a hand, you know the number, you know what to say, but you just can't. It's impossible for you to call the person.
Okay, yeah.
And at that point, I think you need to break something up with some therapy. There's something else going on that perhaps the coaching space might not be relevant to you.
Okay.
So at that point, I cannot guarantee you that you're gonna get the result. But if I were to put that forward, it's much easier for you to sign up. So, but this is a sales conversation. I think in terms of packages, you need to think about what kind of person you are and what kind of person you're working with. And I think what Sevas mentioned is super important, the contracting bit. You need to get to know somebody, and then you need to figure out what package would be right for them. Or if a package would be right for them. So when I'm switched to packages, now I have 4 different ones, and one of them is pay as you go, and you can do a one-off. It's just a lot more expensive because I prefer people going on a journey. So then I have 2 in the middle. One is a lot more intense and all in, and you have in between session contact, and I don't really stop sessions. There's a lot of time and it's more expensive. And I have one that is a lot more flexible. that you can book time in whenever you want, but like it's so one's more flexible, the other one is more intense. And then there's like a super VIP one where you can always call me, and I always say if I'm not having sex or I'm with another client, I'll take your call. You know? So, but that is mega expensive because that's all you're getting. So I wanted to respect autonomy and give people a choice, but and now people kind of pick that off the shelf most of the time. But in about 20-30% of clients, I'll take one of those packages as a foundation, and then we'll figure out how to best make that work for you. Maybe it's a combination of being super flexible and having some in-between session contact. You know? And then you tailor make it.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 questions here that come up for me then. One is, can you guys give me some different kind of example of packages? And the second question was, one thing that immediately I don't understand is, you know, if you're selling packages and you're selling several packages, how can several people have access to you at the same time at all times? I don't quite understand the time flow management, so I'd love to hear a bit more from both of you about how that works.
Should I do the time flow management, because that's a shorter one? And
I think that's like a 30-second answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool. I love short answers.
Yeah, so basically it's within reason and within some of the constrictions. You know, when I say you have 24/7 access to me, I don't mean 24/7 every day of the week, every hour of the day. You know, you have access to me like that. And I said, I'll respond to your messages, or I'll take your call when I'm not with another client. You know, if I hear your call at 3 a.m, I'll answer. You know, my VIP clients, and I only want to have 2 of them, because I never want to have more, because they are quite intense. Or at least can be. And I want to do that. If I do that for too many clients, I wouldn't be able to deal with the demand. So you need to be a bit clever about how you structure your time. How many of these clients can I take? From experience, how often do they actually use the in-between session contact? For many of them, it's enough to know that they can contact you. And often they don't actually do that. You know, I wish a lot more clients would actually reach out to me between sessions, because it means that they're doing a lot of work. You know? So you just have to be time management, you need to be, and some of that is experience, some of that is sitting down and looking at, okay, how many clients can I take on with the time I dedicate to my coaching work?
I see, okay. Yeah,
I think that's been very useful. And just to quickly add to that, right? I personally made a mistake where I had a VIP client like that, and I end up, you know, communicating with her around 11:30, and that, you know, my wife wasn't happy with that. And again, you know, I think that experience was very useful, because I learned to set a bit more professional boundaries there, right? So now it's more, hey, 24 hours, I'll reply within 24 hours between 9 to 5.
Got you. Okay, right? That seems sensible. Yeah.
But again, it's we learn from our own experiences, and sometimes you can have a slot in the evening where you reply.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And to give you an example of a package, something that's been, and I read this in a book. I think it was The Prosperous Coach. Yeah. So I created this package, and I think this will be very useful, because I've met a lot of coaches that created a package. And by the way, it's not so much about the price. You could have a package for your year for 5,000, where, you know, people say no, and that no doesn't mean, you know, it's not, you know, it's a not now. Because what we can do, we can slow down and really explore whether the client really wants to do the coaching. And if the client wants to do coaching, usually I look at, well, what other ways are there? So if we have a package, for example, for, let's say 10,000, makes the maths easier, and someone says, well, you know, I really want this, but I have a budget of 5,000. Then we can either halve the sessions, or we can halve the duration of the package. So we can go, for example, to 6 months.
Okay.
Right? And I've had even where people said, you know what, well, I really want to start this coaching. You know, right now I have, let's say, 2,000. And we look at, okay, well, what would really serve this client? And we look at, for example, doing a 2-day coaching package. So one thing that's been very useful, and this is how a lot of my packages actually came to an existence, is as a result of the big package.
So you look at the yearly one, and then you break it down into shorter times to lower the price.
And often this is really useful, because when people say, well, I can't afford it, it doesn't always mean I can't afford it. Often means like, hey, I'm not really sure if this is right, and if I want to really commit for that long. So I've often had when someone spent a day with me, and they're like, yeah, I'm ready for the 12 months. Or they spent, 3 months with me. I think a lot of the 3-month clients have continued for another 6 or 12 months.
Right.
So often
amazing.
it really builds a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are different preferences. I've seen coaches do only 3-month packages. Coaches do only 12-month packages. Personally, I really want to invest in a relationship because I think it really coaching is about building relationships.
Okay.
I think it's also useful. Like sometimes I offer to just upgrade, because as you were just saying, like after the first day or the first session, the client is like, oh yeah, this is really useful, and I really want more of that. Because like in sales, what you're trying to do is make somebody feel comfortable and confident in your services. And if like my consultations are quite long, they're like 2 hours, so they can already expect like experience enough of me to make that decision whether they want to keep working with me or not. If my consultations were a 20-minute chemistry call, then you haven't really experienced much coaching perhaps. And then it's much harder to make that decision. But also it's less risk because if it's not going to work out, you only wasted 20 minutes. I don't think it's never a waste because all these conversations are amazing and all these people are great. But in terms of packages, that's really useful. So sometimes if the client is still not quite sure, I can sell them a one-off session that is more expensive, but then they can upgrade to a package if they feel confident. I'd much rather have them make the decision straight away. So some coaches might say, I don't do that, I don't offer that. You're either in or you're not. And that's an incentive for them to jump and, take a leap of faith and go for this.
Interesting.
So this is where it depends on what kind of person you are. Some are super tight about their sales processes and they say, hey, if you don't sign up at the end of my consultation, then the opportunity to work with me is gone. You either make a decision now or you don't work with me. You don't get to work with me. I think that's borderline unethical, because it puts a lot of pressure on the table. I always encourage my clients to go sleep on it. It's important, and while you sleep on it, think about this and think about that and think about that. Think about whether you're ready and whether it's the right package for you. Think about whether the price is right. Think about whether you want to work with me or with somebody else. Talk to your spouse, check your bank, do all of that. Just do me a favor, let's put something in the diary so I don't have to chase you. If it's a polite no, I'd rather have you tell me right now because that's much better for me.
Okay.
So there's lots of different ways how we can kind of close that. But when it comes to packages, autonomy and freedom, and that's one of my core values. So I want my client to be fully happy with this, and I'm willing to go the extra mile because it's more complex when you have different packages, especially if you work with a booking system. I have so many different packages now on my booking systems. Many of them I've only used once, for a specific client. So when I tailor make something, I have to put extra work in and also keep in mind what we've agreed. If you only work with one package and one package only, it's very simple. Look, I've got my way of working. It's 6 sessions and there's no in-between session contact. They last 90 minutes every time and we only meet here. You have to come see me. It's a very straightforward package. 6 sessions seems like a very normative kind of thing. Lots of coaches offer 6 session packages. You can do a lot of work and then you can say, take it or leave it. This is the way that I know works well with clients. Do you want to go for it? And there is a power in that. It's like, I went to a restaurant the other day, or like a cafe here around the corner, and I had the choice between food or no food. And I loved it.
Yeah.
Now I'm not so picky anymore about food. I used to, but it's like they ran out of 2 other things, to be fair. They had sandwiches, they had one main, and that's it. You either have the food or you don't have the food. So I loved it. I'm like, I like the style. The food is obviously chosen in the morning or in the beginning of the week or whatever. They decided that this is good food and they're going to serve that for that day. And then you choose it or you don't go there. I think that's fine. If there's too much choice, it's difficult to choose from it.
Yeah.
That's why I technically have 3 choices, just the middle 2 choices. Like I have the VIP annual one, something similar to yours. I have the pay-as-you-go, where you would pay a lot more for the actual time than you would with the packages. And the 2 in the middle, they're price-wise they're the same, even though one is twice the price. But in terms of what you're getting, the service you're getting for your investment, it's roughly the same if you make good use of the in-between session contact. So one is more flexible, the other one is more intense, more all in, gives you more freedom. So that's That's what I like. You know, 3 choices seem to work quite well. And then when somebody comes in the consultation and at the end it's like, well, here are 3 or 4 options. Which one do you want to go for? You know, and if they're hesitant, you have a conversation about that because you're trying to explore what is it about these 3, 4 packages that don't quite work for you. And then you can have the important conversation about what's necessary in order for you to feel really good about this. You know, might there be a version of this package? Might it be about me and they're better off with another coach? Might they not be ready yet? You know, or do we need to talk about the price? You know, so that's how you can kind of tailor the package. I think that's quite useful.
I've got a few questions that came from that. I'm getting a lot more of a sense of like the packaging system versus kind of one-by-one kind of sessions or contracting at the beginning, you know, hypothetically how many sessions you're committing to. I guess one thing I'd love to hear more about is different ways of structuring packages, not just by duration and number of sessions or unlimited access, but I kind of liked what you said earlier about, say, results, like paying for the results. So I wonder, is there a few different kind of common options that coaches use in order to like differentiate their product, I guess, to some degree from others? The other question that came up for me is, perhaps I've lost it again. It was something.
The first one?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I'm looking at you.
Okay, cool. Well, I think it's actually very useful, even though personally I don't think. I don't want to use the word should, right? But I don't think.
Yeah, you really shouldn't.
I don't think it's very useful to guarantee results, but at the same time, you know, when I'm looking at a coach, when I'm hiring a coach, I want to look at their track record. I want to see if they're actually walking their talk, right? And I know people look at that. So when I am talking to a client, even though I don't want to guarantee them a result, I will share case studies or stories that can relate to that.
Ooh, storytelling's got a punch.
Right? and it's so really useful. Like, again, you know, not just kind of throwing stuff in their face, but if someone wants, for example, more confidence, I'll look at clients that I've worked with that gain confidence over a period of time. Someone wants to make more money in their business, we look at stories that relate to that. And again,
sorry to interrupt you there, but like I'm not sure how I feel about that because I've had the same thing. And I know some of the clients probably signed up because they heard somebody else's story of resolving their issues and moving forward and gaining something, which might or might not have anything to do with them whatsoever. Yeah. Because they're different people, and like I try to, when they ask me for some stories, they want to feel reassured. So I'm always find that a bit of a dilemma because I know that somebody else's story might have not anything to do with you, regardless of how similar it seems. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's how we frame it, right? And I think it's actually useful to be very honest about that. Like, hey, this happened. So when people come to me, for example, for business coaching, I share them 2 sides of the coin. I've worked with someone who in 6 months didn't make any money, yet renewed 3 times. Yeah. Right? In the second 6 months, he made a lot of money, and then, you know, we're working on the third 6 months. And then there's other people that in 3 months make a lot of money, but then it goes downhill. And I think the more people we start working with, and when we can paint those pictures, and I think it takes a bit of courage to do that. Because in the beginning you think like, do you really want to share this story?
And it takes experience to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's difficult for somebody who's just starting out. And what I tend to say in those situations is, you can tell other people's stories. Yeah. You know, because it's coaching. And coaching has a lot of parallels. So even if you didn't have all of the results, you can still tell stories. I mean, don't tell the stories as if they were your own clients, obviously, you know, don't fucking lie to people. But what you can say is, I know that coaching is powerful because coaching tends to lead to these kind of outcomes. Yeah. You know, the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, the research portal has incredible statistics of surveys that they have done with receivers of coaching, you know, from organizations and from a whole range of people. You have the numbers, you have the success stories. You can connect yourself and associate yourself with coaching per se. You know, you don't have to have all the coaching stories yourself. As long as you're quite open and you don't mislead people and say, I have 10 years of experience when you had a client 10 years ago and then none in the last 10 years. You know, be authentic, be honest. I think that sells best because, you know, coaches live a lot from referrals. But what you can say is, look, I know from experience of my own clients and many coaches that I've talked to in my practice, trainers and teachers that I've had, books that I've read, coaching is a powerful space because of X, Y, and Z. And here's the kind of stuff that people often work on, you know, and 6 sessions have been shown. Most coaches work with 6 sessions because it's been demonstrated through the experience of all of these coaches and some research that after 6 sessions, many people, they resolve major issues, they achieve major milestones. You know, I can't give you guarantees because I don't know you yet. You know, I don't know what to uncover. You know, I don't know what kind of person you are. Some people are workaholics and they just make everything happen, and other people have major blocks to taking action. And you don't know at that point whether you're going to be able to help somebody resolve their obstacles to growth. You know, but what you can say to make them feel more confident is like, look, if we do discover something and God forbid there is some deep-seated childhood trauma that you have suppressed and all of a sudden it pops up and we realize that's in the way of you getting stuff done, you know, then either I'll give you your money back or I'll refer you to somebody who can help you with that, and then, you know, when you're done you can come back and continue. Like, you're trying to make people feel comfortable with how you frame the coaching package. You know, and you don't need to give money back guarantees, you know, but like I have on occasion give people their money back because it just, after we found out it maybe wasn't the best match, or I realized that there was another coach, there was an example where I felt there was another coach who was a much better fit for them. You know, so we said, okay, how about you pay me for these sessions and then now I'll give you your money back so you can work with this guy. You know, because that would have been serving the client best.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think recently I spoke to someone, right, and said, hey, I've spoken to a lot of coaches. I want to leave my job in 6 months, and I want to be earning 5,000 a month from my, you know, from my passion, from what I love to do. I said, great, and he said, what can you guarantee me? I said, nothing. Right? And we spent 2 sessions together and we really slowed down, right? And he said, hey, that's the reason I want to work with you, because you know what? You focus more on the process. And I think, you know, we want to be honest with people, because sometimes we set these big goals, and I think I'm all about stretching ourselves, but we want to actually look at what is really important. And again, it might not be always you know, when you do that as coach, some clients will be like, hey, that's not for me. I want someone that's way more cutthroat. Right? Personally, I love focusing on results, but I like to really be honest, and when we are honest and authentic, I think we attract the right people to us. Okay, coming back to that story about the client, and he spoke to a lot of coaches who promised him a certain result. And I think what I personally, like, I slowed down and asked him, well, how long have you been doing this? And he said, well, I've been doing this for 4 years. And I said, okay, how much have you made, like, in terms of money? And he said, none. And I said, okay, so you've put this huge pressure on yourself to leave your job in 6 months and achieve this goal. Right? And, you know, it's like, it seemed like he was looking for someone to kind of like do some magic there. Right?
Yeah, you go fix me.
And I think a lot of people buy into that. So a lot of coaches will be like, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to give you that. But but on the other side, nobody could give him a guarantee. So he was kind of looking for a guarantee for that result. And I think part of me was thinking like, well, can I do this? And do I really want to give it to him? Maybe, you know. But actually, part of me was like, hey, I don't really mind if he doesn't work with me, but let's be really honest and see what serves him.
I think this is where coaching sometimes gets a bad rap. I mentioned that panel earlier before we started, which was essentially about, you know, the reputation of coaching. And I think there's a lot of coaches out there. I probably don't see them as much as many consumers do. They do make these big promises, and they do say, this is the package and you just need to pay me $9,000 and all your wishes will come true. You know, these people are out there and they're really slick salespeople, and they go right into your pain points and right into your fantasies and your desires, and they paint this image of the most wonderful life. Most of them are living it and putting it out on Instagram and social media and articles and whatever. So they tap into that desire to be like them. And I know some of them, and they actually live that life. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can also. because people are wired differently. You know, I've worked with a coach who's was really at the top of his game. You know, very successful from the outside. It looks perfect. You know, super skilled. Like one of the best websites I've seen. And then I realized, oh, that guy's actually, there's a lot going on for him inside that people don't really see. So there are a lot of very skilled salespeople, and this guy is actually amazing. He does really, really good work. But there's some that are actual fraudsters, you know. And just because you paid so much money, you don't want to tell anybody that you've wasted 9 grand on a coaching package or 25, and it actually didn't really do anything. So most very high ticket coaches. And I don't want to say most, but like there's certainly quite a few out there who don't deliver on being a really, really top class coach. It's just because you pay so much money is you're going to be super committed to the process. And then very often these coaches don't have to do that much other than show up and be really curious and give you a space where you can focus on your work, depending on what you contract. And this is again part of the coaching package. It's not only the logistics, how many sessions and what's the price. It's also how do you tune in? How does your process work? Am I gonna get a lot of advice and tips and recommendations? Are you gonna, you know, take me into the field and show me how it's done? You know, which I would personally not necessarily consider coaching as such. It's one area of coaching that is, you know, very instructive and directive. It's also coaching because people call themselves coaches and they do that kind of work, and there's a lot of value in it, you know, but there's a lot of consulting in it, or mentoring or training. So I think you have to frame your space. Well, how does your coaching work? And then you build the package around it so logistically it works for your client. But perhaps the contracting bit and what a coach is a different conversation. I think it might be useful to kind of recap on coaching packages. And perhaps, like, what did you take from the conversation? Because we've been talking about it for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of information in there, but to make the pure and clean difference between session-by-session coaching and a coaching package, the difference I mainly get from it is you're asking the client up front to commit to a number of sessions and pay up front, which I'm understanding kind of engages their commitment to doing the work.
Could be a payment plan, but their commitment, that's the important bit.
Right, okay, so that's interesting. I guess, you know, that's a good starting point. It raises even more questions for me in many ways.
Fantastic. We'll revisit them.
But yeah, I think I have to go away and think more about it.
I think the main points for me is that the commitment is really important for people who want to get big results, because the big results are usually not done in one session. And especially for people who want to go on a journey that might have some difficulty or a challenging part to it, because then committing to a session and committing to a package and a journey will allow them to go through the times when the going gets tough, you know, and you can achieve a lot more without them disappearing when things start to become difficult.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think for me it's about, you know, I think if someone is listening to this, they probably think like, well, I've done this, but I'm quite uncomfortable to go 6 months and 12 months. And I think our personal experiences shape our packages often. So my first coach had a 3-month package. And honestly, I thought a lot of times about quitting, right? Because...
You did?
Yeah, I thought about quitting. No, as a client.
Right.
My first coaching package with my first coach, it was a 3-month package, but it was 3 times my salary, right? And my wife was like, look, you're paying so much, just stick with it. Something might come out of it. Right? But I've heard this again and again from clients where they said, hey, thank you so much for believing in me and helping me commit to that, whatever the 6 months, 12 months, because there are times where I thought about quitting.
Okay.
But you were very clear about, hey, there's no refund and no guarantee.
Okay.
And I think often I get that feedback, you know, but personally I think, you know, if someone's listening to this, is experiment with it. Start with where you are and, you know, experiment with that. And I don't think it's a rule like, oh, you can only charge someone for 6 months once you've paid for 6 months, but it's often very helpful when you've experienced a bit of like 6 months of coaching. you can see the power of that. And when you've experienced 12 months of coaching, then you see like the cumulative effect of coaching, right? So, and I think that's really useful. I've heard often stories from really experienced coaches that, you know, they were always doing sessions every 2 weeks, and once they paid for a coach for weekly, they got more comfortable charging clients for weekly sessions. So it's really to do a lot with how we play it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think, you know, there's a rule to it, but often like we can take a client where we haven't been. You know, so it's kind of starting where, you know, that's my takeaway, is really, you know, starting with where we are and just exploring, experimenting with different things.
Okay.
So
cool.
especially if you are still in training, you know, or you're still trying stuff out, experiment with it. And even if you're not in training and you're an experienced coach watching this, I think it's always fine to have a practice client to experiment with something. You know, charge somebody half for something you're trying out for the first time, for example. And I'd be super interested in what people out there think. You know, do you work session by session, or do you work in packages? You know, what else have you picked up from this conversation? Because I know probably we have missed some angles, and maybe we can come back to it in future episodes. And if you have other questions, you know, go to that link in the description and send us your question. We'd love to discuss it. See you next time. Thanks, guys.
See you next time.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that, you know what to do. Hit subscribe and send us a question. See you next time.